I stood outside the Royal Bank of Canada on Yonge Street, Toronto, looking at myself in the glass doors. I was 72 years old, and for the first time in 50 years, I couldn't get my own money. The security guard had just walked me out politely but firmly after the branch manager said my son had called earlier, warning them I was confused and shouldn't be allowed to take out money without someone watching me. My hands were shaking, not from being old, but from anger. It was supposed to be a simple task. My late wife Catherine's birthday was in 3 days, and I wanted to take out cash to buy flowers for her grave at Mount Pleasant Cemetery. White roses, her favorite. We'd been married 47 years before pancreatic cancer took her 18 months ago. But when I'd asked for $600, the teller's face had changed. She'd excused herself, came back with the manager, and then I was being walked out like a thief. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harrison," the manager had said, not looking at me. "We have rules for clients who need help. Your son Marcus called this morning. He has your best interests at heart." Marcus, my only child, the boy I'd put through medical school, who now lived in a mansion in Rosedale while I lived in the same modest semi-detached home in Scarborough where Catherine and I had raised him. I pulled out my phone to call him, but it went straight to voicemail again. He'd been avoiding my calls for 3 weeks now, ever since I'd refused to sign papers he'd brought over, papers that would give him power of attorney over my money and healthcare decisions. "Dad, you're getting older," he'd said that night, his voice dripping with fake concern. "What if something happens? What if you fall or forget to pay bills? This is just to protect you." I told him I was perfectly able to manage my own business. I'd been a mechanical engineer for 40 years, managed complex projects, raised him alone after Catherine's diagnosis. My mind was sharp. I did the crossword every morning, managed my investments, volunteered at the Scarborough Community Center, teaching woodworking to teenagers. But he'd kept pushing, bringing his wife Vanessa into it. She'd sat on my sofa with her designer purse in her lap, sighing dramatically. "Marcus is only trying to help. Don't you trust your own son?" I'd asked them to leave. Now, standing on that cold November sidewalk, I wondered if this was punishment for saying no. Had Marcus actually called the bank, or was there something worse happening? A young woman came out of the bank, noticed me standing there, and stopped. She was maybe 30, wearing a bank employee lanyard. She looked around, then stepped closer. "Mr. Harrison?" I looked at her. Her name tag read Priya Singh, Customer Service Representative. "I processed your account question," she said quietly, "and I think you should know something." She pulled out her phone, hiding the screen from the security cameras. "Your son didn't just call this morning. He's been calling for weeks, and 3 days ago, someone, the caller ID said it was you, called to add him as a joint account holder on your checking account." My blood went cold. "That wasn't me." "I didn't think so," Priya said, "because the call came at 2:30 in the afternoon. According to our records, you were here in person at that exact time depositing a check. You can't be in 2 places at once." "Why are you telling me this?" Her jaw tightened. "My grandmother went through something similar. My uncle convinced her she was losing her memory, got access to her accounts, and drained everything before we realized what was happening. She died in a city-run nursing home instead of the private care place she'd saved for." She looked directly at me. "Get a lawyer today and check your other accounts. If he's done this at one bank, he's probably tried others." She walked back inside before I could thank her. I stood there for 10 seconds thinking. Then I pulled out my phone and called my credit union, then my investment broker. Then I tried to access my online banking. Every single account had been locked or restricted. Notes in the system saying I'd called to report confusion or memory problems. 2 accounts now had Marcus listed as co-owner. My investment portfolio had a pending transfer form that I'd never signed, and my email had been changed on every account. I wasn't getting notifications anymore. This wasn't carelessness. This was planned. I flagged a taxi and gave the driver an address in downtown Toronto, a law firm Catherine and I had used years ago for our wills. James Chen, our old lawyer, was semi-retired now, but his daughter Sarah had taken over the practice. Sarah Chen looked exactly like her father. Sharp eyes, careful. She listened to everything without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. "Mr. Harrison," she said when I finished, "what you're describing is financial elder abuse. It's more common than people realize, and family members are the ones doing it in over 60% of cases." She opened a file on her computer. "I'm going to make some calls, but first we need to prove your mental ability before Marcus tries to claim otherwise." "What do you mean?" "If he's building a story that you have dementia or confusion, he might try to get a medical test that supports that claim. We need to get ahead of it." She picked up her phone. "I'm calling Dr. Patricia Morrison. She's a geriatric psychiatrist who does ability evaluations. Can you go see her this afternoon?" 2 hours later, I was sitting in Dr. Morrison's office at Women's College Hospital, going through brain tests, memory recall, problem solving, clock drawing, math problems, current events. She reviewed my results and looked up. "Mr. Harrison, your brain function is well within normal range for your age. Actually, you've scored higher than many 50-year-olds I test. There is absolutely no medical evidence of dementia, confusion, or problems." She signed a document and handed it to me. "This is a formal medical opinion stating that you have full mental ability and decision-making ability. Keep it with you at all times." Armed with that document, I went back to Sarah Chen's office. She'd been busy. "Your son has been thorough," she said grimly. "He's contacted your bank, credit union, investment broker, and even your family doctor's office. He told them all the same story, that you've been forgetting things, getting confused, wandering. He said you forgot to pay your property taxes last year." "That's a lie. I pay them automatically through my bank." "I know. I pulled the records. You've never missed a payment." She slid a stack of papers across her desk. "But here's what worries me. He filed a petition with the Ontario Superior Court yesterday. He's applying to be appointed your legal guardian on grounds of mental incapacity." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "He can do that?" "He can try. There'll be a hearing, but Marcus is a doctor, which gives him credibility. And if he brings other people to testify that you've been acting strangely—" She trailed off. "What other people?" Sarah's expression was grim. "Your neighbors. I called 3 of them as character witnesses, people who've known you for decades. 2 of them told me Marcus had already been by to talk to them. He told them he was worried about you living alone, that you'd been leaving the stove on, forgetting their names. He asked them to keep an eye on you and let him know if they noticed anything concerning." I thought of my neighbors, Margaret and Tom, who I'd known for 35 years, Linda, who Catherine used to have coffee with every Sunday. They knew me. They'd known Catherine. Did they believe him? Margaret didn't. She told me to tell you that she's happy to testify on your behalf. But Tom seemed uncertain, and Linda, Sarah hesitated. Linda said she had noticed you seemed different since Catherine passed. Quieter, more withdrawn. My wife died. Of course I'm different. I know, but grief can be used as a weapon in these situations. Sarah pulled out another document. We need to move fast. I'm filing an emergency counterpetition to block any changes to your accounts, and we're requesting a fast hearing, but I need you to do something difficult. What? I need you to gather evidence, emails, text messages, any documentation that shows your son's recent behavior, bank statements showing you've been managing money properly, bills you've paid on time, anything that shows you're capable and competent. I spent the rest of the day going through my files. Catherine had kept careful records, and I'd continued the practice. Every bill paid on time, tax returns filed correctly, investment decisions that had actually grown our retirement savings even after her death. But as I dug through my email, I found something that made my blood run cold. 3 weeks ago, right after I'd refused to sign the power of attorney, Marcus had sent an email to my family doctor, Dr. Kowalski, who I'd been seeing for 23 years. Dear Dr. Kowalski, it read, I'm writing as both a physician and a concerned son regarding my father, David Harrison. I've noticed increasing signs of brain decline over the past 6 months, memory lapses, confusion about dates, difficulty managing money. He's becoming defensive when I try to help, which I understand is common in early dementia. He refuses to see a specialist, so I'm reaching out to you. Would it be possible to note these concerns in his file? I'm worried about his safety living alone. I may need medical documentation to support a guardianship application if his condition gets worse. Thank you for your attention to this delicate family matter." Dr. Kowalski had responded, "Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'll make note of your concerns. However, I should mention that David was just here 2 weeks ago for his annual physical, and I observed no signs of brain problems during our appointment. His blood work was excellent, and he was sharp as ever. That said, I'll keep an eye out during future visits." Marcus had replied, "Patients can often perform well during appointments, hiding symptoms. The family sees the real picture at home. I appreciate your vigilance." I felt sick. He was building a paper trail, creating a story, and he'd almost convinced my own doctor. I forwarded everything to Sarah Chen. Her response came within minutes. "This is good. This proves planning. He started building this case before you even refused to sign his papers. He was planning this. Save everything." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed in the room I'd shared with Catherine and tried to understand how my son had become this person. He'd always been ambitious, competitive, but when had that turned into this? And then I remembered something Catherine had said, maybe 6 months before she died. We'd been lying in this same bed, and she'd been too weak to go downstairs, so I was bringing her meals up. "David," she'd whispered, "promise me you'll be careful with Marcus." "What do you mean?" "He asked me about the house, about your investments, how much we have." She'd paused to catch her breath. "I told him it's none of his concern while we're alive. He got angry, said he was just trying to plan for the future, help us make good decisions." "He's a doctor. He probably thinks about estate planning, maybe." But she hadn't sounded convinced. "Just promise me you'll protect yourself." I'd promised. And then she'd died, and the grief had swallowed everything else. Now I understood what she'd seen. Marcus hadn't been concerned about our future. He'd been planning for his inheritance. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Sarah had warned me it might get ugly. It got worse than ugly. Marcus showed up with Vanessa and a lawyer, Richard Pelton, who worked for one of Toronto's most expensive firms. They'd clearly spent serious money preparing their case. They'd brought witnesses, Tom, my neighbor, who testified reluctantly that he'd seen me standing in my driveway one morning looking confused. When Sarah cross-examined him, it came out that I'd been looking at a broken fence plank trying to decide whether to repair it myself or call someone. Not confusion, problem-solving. They brought a woman named Dr. Helen Crawford, a geriatric psychiatrist Marcus knew professionally. She testified that based on the concerns described by the family, I fit a pattern consistent with early-stage dementia. Sarah destroyed her on cross-examination. She'd never met me, never examined me, was basing her opinion entirely on Marcus's claims. But the worst part was listening to Marcus himself. He sat in the witness box wearing a navy suit, his face arranged in an expression of pained concern, and he lied. "My father has always been stubborn," he told the judge. "After my mother died, he refused help. He stopped returning calls. Neighbors told me they were worried. He was forgetting to bring in his garbage bins, leaving lights on all night, not answering the door." Every word was a careful half-truth wrapped around a lie. I'd been grieving, yes. I'd been quieter, yes. But forgetting garbage bins? That happened once when I'd been at the cemetery all day. Lights on all night? I'd started leaving the porch light on because Catherine always had. Not answering the door? I'd stopped answering when Marcus came by because every visit turned into pressure to sign papers. "I found expired food in his fridge," Marcus continued. "He'd forgotten to pay his hydro bill." "That's not true," I said, and Sarah squeezed my arm to keep me quiet. The judge, Justice Patricia Reeves, a stern woman in her 60s, made a note. Marcus's lawyer produced documents, the bank manager's report about me being confused, the notes in my doctor's file, emails from Tom expressing concern. Then Sarah presented our evidence, Dr. Morrison's comprehensive ability evaluation, my bank statements showing perfect financial management, letters from Margaret, from the community center where I volunteered, from the head of the Scarborough Woodworking Club testifying to my clarity of mind and judgment. And then Sarah played her trump card. "Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence of the applicant's actual motivation for this guardianship application." She held up a document. This is a proposal from Rosedale Developments Incorporated, a company that wants to buy Mr. Harrison's property as part of a development project. The offer is for $1.2 million. The property has been in the Harrison family for 35 years. Mr. Harrison has refused to sell. She placed another document on the judge's bench. This email, sent from Marcus Harrison's personal account to Rosedale Developments, dated 3 months ago, reads, "I appreciate your interest in my father's property. He's elderly and resistant to change, but I'm working on the situation. If I can obtain legal authority over his affairs, we can move forward with the sale." The courtroom went silent. Marcus's face drained of color. "Your Honor," Sarah continued, "this guardianship application has nothing to do with Mr. Harrison's well-being. It's about gaining legal control of his assets so his son can sell a property against his wishes and pocket the money." Justice Reeves looked at Marcus. "Is this email authentic?" Marcus's lawyer whispered furiously in his ear. Marcus stammered, "That's taken out of context. I was just—" "Answer the question. Did you send this email?" "Yes, but—" "And were you planning to sell your father's home if this guardianship was granted?" Marcus couldn't lie under oath. "I thought it would be in his best financial interest to, without his consent." Silence. Justice Reeves removed her glasses. "Mr. Harrison, I'm denying your application for guardianship. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order preventing you from contacting any of your father's financial institutions or medical providers regarding his mental capacity. The court finds your testimony to be not credible and your motivations to be financial rather than medical." She looked at me. "Mr. David Harrison, you have full mental ability and the right to make your own decisions. This court finds no evidence of problems." She banged her gavel. I walked out of that courtroom with Sarah Chen beside me. Marcus tried to approach me in the hallway, but his lawyer pulled him back. "Dad, please," he called out. I kept walking. Outside, standing on the courthouse steps, Sarah turned to me. "What will you do now?" I thought about Catherine, about the white roses I still needed to buy, about the house we'd built a life in, the garden she'd planted, the memories in every room. "I'm going to live my life," I said, "on my own terms." But I wasn't done. Over the next 2 months, I worked with Sarah to restructure everything. I created an ironclad will that left the house to a trust benefiting the Scarborough Community Center with provisions for low-income housing. My investments were placed in a trust managed by an independent firm. I named Sarah Chen and Dr. Morrison as my healthcare proxies, not Marcus. I documented everything that had happened and gave copies to Elder Abuse Ontario, who opened an investigation into Marcus's conduct. The College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario launched their own inquiry into whether he'd violated professional ethics by using his medical credentials to support false claims about a patient, even if that patient was his father. And I sold one piece of property I did own, a small cottage on Lake Simcoe that Catherine and I had bought years ago but rarely used. I donated the money to a legal fund that helps seniors fight financial abuse. 6 months after the hearing, I was in my woodworking shop at the community center teaching a class to a group of teenagers when Priya Singh walked in. "Mr. Harrison." I looked up, surprised. "Priya, what are you doing here?" She smiled. "I quit the bank, enrolled in law school. I started Osgood Hall in the fall." She held up a folder. "I wanted to give you this." It was a newspaper article. Toronto doctor suspended for elder abuse claims. Marcus had been suspended from practice for 6 months and required to complete ethics training. The article mentioned my case as part of a larger pattern. He'd apparently tried similar tactics with 2 of his elderly patients, convincing them to sign over medical decisions to him, then steering them toward expensive private care facilities where he received referral bonuses. "I thought you'd want to know," Priya said quietly. I thanked her. After she left, I stood there holding that article. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me just felt sad. He was still my son. I'd held him as a baby, taught him to ride a bike, sat in the audience at his medical school graduation beaming with pride. But he was also someone I didn't recognize anymore, someone who'd looked at his grieving father and seen opportunity instead of a person to protect. That night, I visited Catherine's grave. I brought white roses like I did every week. I sat on the bench we'd bought together and told her everything. I kept my promise, I said to the headstone. I protected myself. The wind rustled through the trees at Mount Pleasant Cemetery. Somewhere nearby, a family was holding a service. Life and death, cycling on. I stayed until sunset, then drove home to Scarborough. Margaret was watering her garden and waved. Tom nodded from his porch. We were polite now, but not friends, not after his testimony. Inside my house, I made dinner just for one, like always now. But it was my house, my choice, my life. 3 months later, I got a letter from Marcus. It was handwritten, not typed. "Dad," it began, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not sure I can forgive myself. The suspension gave me time. To think, more time than I've allowed myself in years. I was so focused on success, on money, on building the life I thought I deserved, that I lost sight of what actually matters. I convinced myself I was helping you, but I was really just helping myself. Mom would be ashamed of me. I'm ashamed of me. I'm in therapy now, trying to understand how I became someone who could hurt the man who sacrificed everything for me. I don't know if I'll ever figure it out, but I wanted you to know that you were right to fight back. You were right to protect yourself. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I read that letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because here's what I learned. Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who can hurt us worst. And trusting them again isn't about forgiveness, it's about evidence. Marcus had shown me who he was. Believing him would require him to show me something different over time, with actions, not words. Catherine used to say that people don't change unless consequences force them to. Marcus had faced consequences. Whether he'd actually changed remained to be seen. In the meantime, I had my life back, my independence, my dignity. I started dating someone, Evelyn, a widow I met through the community center. We took things slow. She'd lost her husband to Alzheimer's and understood what it meant to rebuild a life after loss. I expanded my woodworking classes, started teaching at a seniors residence too. I turned 73, then 74, and every week I brought white roses to Catherine's grave and told her about my week, the good parts and the hard parts, the moments when I missed Marcus, missed who he used to be, or who I'd thought he was, and the moments when I felt grateful for my freedom. If someone had told me at 72 that my own son would try to take everything from me, I wouldn't have believed it. We think it happens to other people, other families, but it happened to me. And I survived it because one young bank teller had the courage to whisper a warning, because a lawyer believed me, because a doctor documented the truth, because I fought back instead of accepting the story being written about me. To anyone reading this who might be facing something similar, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Document everything. Get a lawyer early. Don't assume that family means safety. Sometimes family means danger. And most importantly, your age doesn't determine your worth or your ability. Being 70, 80, 90 doesn't make you unable. It makes you experienced. Don't let anyone, even your own children, convince you otherwise. I'm 76 now. I still live in my house in Scarborough. Still do the crossword every morning. Still teach woodworking twice a week. Marcus sent another letter last month. He's completed his suspension, working at a community clinic now instead of private practice. He's divorced from Vanessa, apparently. She left when the money trouble started. He asked if we could meet for coffee. I haven't decided yet, because some betrayals cut too deep to heal completely. And that's okay. Forgiveness isn't required. Boundaries are. What I do know is this. I reclaimed my life. I protected what Catherine and I built together. And when my time comes, I'll be buried next to her in Mount Pleasant Cemetery, knowing that I lived on my own terms until the very end. That's the victory Marcus tried to take from me, and that's the victory I refuse to give.